You're watching One on One. We're talking with the head of UNAIDS, Dr. Peter Pior. Take me through some of the frustrations you felt in fighting this disease, in trying to make people aware of it. Think of some of the frustrating moments you've had.
That's a hard
So many?
choice. There are so many.
So many of them?
But I can put them in many different categories. I think in the early days of UNAIDS, it was to convince the world that AIDS is a problem, that this is not just like any of other infectious diseases that have been around for centuries, like tuberculosis or malaria. I mean, they're bad and so on, but AIDS is completely different. And so convincing heads of state, I always targeted the top. I said, why, it's the same effort to convince the person in charge as someone who's not.
And they do open their doors for you. You've met most of the guys you need to, don't you?
Yes, I think I must have met at least half of the world's heads of state, prime ministers. And no, there have been spectacular breakthroughs. And I think the most recent one, it was in China. In June in 2005, I met with Premier Wen Jiabao, a very dynamic man with an open mind to the world. And up to then, up to the SARS epidemic, I should say, China really covered up the AIDS epidemic and then gradually started to open it. And after the meeting with Premier Wen Jiabao, he called an executive session of the State Council, and they issued 9 measures to deal with AIDS in China. It really turned around everything. And I knew that we were there when Premier Wen Jiabao said AIDS is a new type of security problem. Putting and framing it in that sense, then I knew that, because there are only 2 things that matter for the top people in the world. It's the economy and it's security. That I didn't know when I got into this job. I was a poor doctor and scientist, and I thought, if you have the facts, you have the evidence, then people will judge for themselves and we can go for it. That was a big mistake.
But China is a country that's moving forward. I mean, if you look at somewhere like Cuba, and you met with Fidel Castro,
right.
How do you deal with a country that's been locked in time?
Yes, the big issue when I first went to Cuba was the fact that people with HIV were basically locked up in so-called sanatoria for the rest of their lives. So how to deal with that, and how to say that's not a good idea, because it's basically a violation of people's rights, of human rights, which is not something you can really always use as a good argument in Cuba. And secondly, it's not effective. And it's the last argument that convinced Fidel Castro. And they actually have a good AIDS program now, probably one of the best HIV prevention, because what they do is, when you're discovered to be HIV positive, you're in some kind of training for 6 months, how to deal with your life and so on, and you're turned into an AIDS counselor and a prevention worker and so on, because everybody's employed by the state. So that's the way, and so they're doing a good job at the moment. But there are, it was hardest in Africa in the beginning. Why? Because I think Africa is confronted with so many other problems. So why, where to start?
Why are you adding to the problem?
Yes.
Is their opinion, I guess.
Secondly, there had been, frankly, racist use of the AIDS epidemic, and that it was so rampant in Africa. So that didn't help either. So there, I had to go to each country one by one, and I went to basically all countries in Africa. And again, using the economic arguments in the first place. So we build the evidence on that side. But also, politicians are people like anybody else. And they may have a son who died from AIDS. President Kaunda from Zambia, he announced on the radio that his son had died from AIDS. It was a very courageous act. And so the personal part of it is equally important, I would say. But big frustrations I had with the donors in this world, the rich countries. They actually were far more difficult to deal with than the so-called developing country leaders. Some of them don't like the UN. Some of them, want to control their money. Putting AIDS on that agenda was very difficult.
How useful are celebrities in trying to get your message across?
The messenger is as important as the messages, as we know. And I think that celebrities have done really a lot of good in the fight against poverty. We had this whole campaign, Make Poverty History, with Bono and Bob Geldof. But we try to identify in each country and in each context what are the role models, the celebrities. And there are extremely few that are truly global. That's an illusion. When people say global in the Western world, they mix up what's in the American and British media. They think that's global. That's not global.
So it's not just Hollywood.
It's not just Hollywood. Bollywood is bigger than Hollywood these days. So, but Bollywood is not on board when it comes to AIDS yet. But cricket players, I mean, think of Pakistan, India. We've got some great cricket players. So it's sports, music. MTV is one of our biggest allies. With this whole series Staying Alive, and they're reaching sometimes up to 3 billion young people. It's amazing. So we try to go with those who are have an audience, are role models in each country. Phil Lutaya, nobody has heard of him probably outside, East Africa, but he did a lot to break AIDS open in Africa because he was infected himself.
Now, is there a danger that when you have celebrities spreading a message, so many of them seem to be looking for causes that after a while the general public, the grassroots support goes because they say, oh, it's another star using another cause?
No, there are several risks, let's put it that way, with celebrities doing this. One is that often they're not only the messenger, but people will look for them to set the policy, and that is not their comparative advantage to say so. And that's why it's very important to support the celebrities. And then there is a certain degree of cynicism, of course. But some of them are doing this for years and years and years. And others, well, after a few trips to Africa, then it's done.
Now, you've said how, your job is to get the resources, use them properly, to get the word out there. What do you believe to be the most effective way of getting the word out to the people on the streets that this is a serious problem, it's not going to go away, and that it's something we all have to work together on?
We need to look into in each community, each culture, what works. And it's a combination usually of the word of let's say the chiefs, whoever is people listen to, but the sports stars can be traditional chiefs, it can be in the mosques, in the churches, the business. So there is not one medium, but you need to use different channels. And then the second thing is you need to follow up with something. It's not enough to tell people AIDS exists, watch out, and one of the messages, use a condom if there are no condoms available. So that has to go hand in hand. That's what we try to do.
What is it you most like about your job? What is it that you most like in doing this work?
At the moment, what I like the most is that we're starting to see the fruits of all our investments, of all the frustrations that we had to go to. Negotiating, for example, a lower price of these anti-AIDS medicines, the antiretrovirals, was a very difficult process. But now we have well over 1 million people in poor countries who are on treatment. I mean, we see a decline in new infections in East Africa. We see India and China, the authorities taking on AIDS. I mean, hopefully this year also Russia, because there we're not there yet. So that is what I enjoy. I need to see results. Yes.
Now, you as a person, what do you feel you haven't achieved in your life so far that you would like to achieve?
Well, first of all, with UNAIDS, I want to go on for some time because I want to make sure that not every year we have to announce that 3 million people die from AIDS. I mean, all these 3 million people could be saved with, if we could reach them with treatment, and that 5 million people become infected. That's the first thing that and still my top priority, making that happen, working more for the people. But then for myself, I'd like to have more time to reflect on what's going on in the world, what I'm doing, what are the lessons in today's, let's say, globalized world, how to take on an issue like AIDS, because there will be either epidemics or global issues, and we don't have the mechanics, the architecture in place to do that, and that's something that I'm very interested in.
Dr. Peter Pior, we wish you luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Riz.